on this week's FPL Happy Hour.
First things first, Sham does talk a lot. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be joining us more over the course of this season, and yeah, you'll hear his voice more than you hear mine.
Hello and welcome to another season of FPL Happy Hour with me, Sham, otherwise known as FPL 2 Guys 1 Cup on Twitter.
And myself, Rob, otherwise known as FPL Panda.
Rob, how you feeling?
I'm good, mate. It was a good break of 5 days. Yeah, yeah. We've had a nice time off for the last 6 weeks, and yeah, we're back for some Premier League action now, or fantasy Premier League action.
That's it. Right, so tonight is the beginning of another season for us covering FPL, and what better way to do it than as part of Planet FPL's Takeover Week. So before we get into it, myself and Rob would just like to say a big thanks to James and Suj for doing this. It's a great initiative to help promote newer accounts like us, and we both really appreciate it. So thank you, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so to all the people that may be listening or watching for us for the first time, welcome, and we hope you enjoy it. You can follow us on Twitter at FPL_Happy Hour. We're on YouTube if you'd like to see our lovely, pretty faces and some fancy graphics that Rob puts together.
Our lovely, pretty faces.
Yeah, not mine. And for those who like it on audio, we're on Spotify, Apple Music, and a host of other platforms as well. Right, so just a brief introduction into us. As I'm already talking, I'll go first. I'm a West Ham season ticket holder for my sins. I've been playing FPL seriously for about 4 years, maybe 5 years, mostly ranked around 80 to 100k. With one season, a couple of seasons ago, I finished at 6,000. Rob, yourself?
First things first, Sham does talk a lot. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be joining us more over the course of this season, and yeah, you'll hear his voice more than you hear mine. My name's Rob. I'm a Man United fan for my sins. I've been playing FPL for about 4.5 seasons seriously, and then probably about 15 years, like along with other fantasy games, kind of very casually, like as in I make a team and then give up after 2 weeks. But yeah, and last season I finished 78k or 80k, and generally finished sort of in the top 250,000 in those 4 seasons. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, I like spreadsheets as well.
Yeah, do like spreadsheets.
I like a spreadsheet.
Right, so before we get into the meat of today's podcast, let me give you a bit of an insight into the format of our usual podcast for the season, just so you know what to expect. So we do 2 a week, but today's one, we've basically brought together bits and pieces of both of them and put it into one. You'll see some fancy graphics on the screen. Those are things that Rob puts together. So throughout the season, they'll update, and it's got XG and XA and predictions and all of that stuff, which is really good to see for those that are on YouTube. So the first of our podcasts usually comes out on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it's a pre-record. On that episode, we'll talk about how that game week went for us. We'll have a ones to watch section where we'll each pick a player that we really liked from the previous game week just gone, and with some stats to show why we like them and why we think they're really good going forward. We'll then have a hot topic section where we'll discuss 2 hot topics, one chosen by us and one chosen by the community on a Twitter poll. One will be stats based and the other one not. We'll then end it with a first impression section where we'll have a look at the upcoming game weeks briefly and discuss what we want to think about for that game week going forward. Then the other podcast we'll do on a Thursday night, and that's a live stream on YouTube, and that will be around 10:30 after Champman. On that episode, we'll be introducing a new section where each of us will pick a free hit draft for that week, and that will give us a way of discussing the players that we really like for that week, and our teams for that week and what we think about the fixtures. And then we'll follow that with a YouTube live Q&A. So if you want a Q&A, pop on and we'll answer your questions live. And each podcast we aim to be about an hour. Right, so that's enough what to expect about future episodes. Let's crack on with today. And to start us off, we've got two hot topics tonight. We put out a poll on Twitter for the community hot topic, and FPL season predictions came out on top. So let's talk about that one first. And Rob, enough of me talking. As you say, I'm talking a lot. You can take care of that section.
Perfect. Yeah, so we thought, as it's our first episode of the season, and we've only sort of really started really looking into the games. We're obviously really busy with Euros content. So this week we've really started having a look, and just we thought it would be fun just to put it out there as an idea of just some initial thoughts on who we think the highest scoring players over the course of the season, etc., could be. So we'll start off with goalkeepers first. Who are you going for as your highest scoring goalkeeper for this season?
Right, so I'm going to go with a left field option. It would be easy to say someone like Martinez or Edison or Allison or someone like that. But I'm going to go with a left field option. And that's based on last year's stats. And I'm going to go with Sanchez of Brighton, because Brighton posted some really good stats, underlying stats last year, but they just didn't come into fruition. Like they could have finished fourth on XG, and for some reason it just didn't click. They missed Lamptey a lot of that season. And yeah, I just think Sanchez is going to do well. I think, you know, he makes a lot of saves. And yeah, I'm going to go with Sanchez.
Well, I'm glad you said that you're not going to pick Martinez, Allison, or Edison, because they're just picks that everyone will pick, and that's why I'm picking Emi Martinez. I think he was brilliant in the Copa America. In the semi-finals he was brilliant. In the penalty shootout for Argentina in the final he was brilliant. I think we've seen over the last couple of seasons a truly world-class keeper just emerge out of nowhere, and he seems to, if he keeps a clean sheet, he generally gets 1 or 2 save points. He always picks up the BPS. He reminds me of Nick Pope 2 or 3 seasons ago, and then Dean Henderson was the same at Sheffield United a couple of seasons ago. Like, if they kept a clean sheet, they'd pick up the free BPS. And that's why I think he's just going to... I think there'll be other keepers that keep more clean sheets. I think Allison and Edison in particular will. But I think the save points and the BPS, I think Emi Martinez will outweigh them with that. So, yeah, I'm going to go with him to not be so boring as to say one of the big 2 keepers. Yeah, and if you were the Brazilian manager, you'd be picking Edison anyway. So, right. Next up, defenders. Now there's so many potentially high scoring defenders. I mean, again, it's the sort of big 2 or 3 clubs that you'd be looking at. Who are you thinking of?
Well, look, last year, Robertson came top by 1 point ahead of TAA. I'm going to go with TAA to top Robertson and everyone else this season. So I'm going to go with TAA. And the reason is you know, he missed out in that England squad. I think he'll really want to prove a point and try and make it for the World Cup squad. Obviously, there's World Cup qualifiers coming up, and then you've got Qatar next year. And I just think, you know, he's been part of that England side for a long time, and then him missing out, I think, probably hurt him quite a lot. And I think he'll have a point to prove.
It was through injury, wasn't it? He missed out. He got injured, didn't he? So
but
still
then
gonna hurt.
But then at the same time, he only just made it because they introduced it to 26, didn't he? So he wasn't part of the initial 23. Is that right? I think.
I'm not sure entirely.
I think he wasn't part of the initial 23, and then when they increased it to 26, he was, and then he got injured and had to come out. So I think, yeah, with Van Dijk back as well, I think Liverpool will look a lot stronger. And yeah, I'm back in TA this year.
Yeah, I think it's hard to look away from Liverpool, especially with Van Dijk back, and they've signed this new centre half Canate as well. And if him and Van Dijk can strike up a decent partnership, I think the whole balance of that side's back in there, and yeah, those two fullbacks are going to be high scorers as long as Van Dijk is back and fit, and they can kind of continue where they left off 2 seasons ago. I'm going for a defender from one of the other big clubs, and that's João Cancelo from City. I think City played some of their, well, and him in particular played some of their best football when they kind of moved into kind of a 5-back, but it was kind of a 4-back at the same time, where Cancelo was pushed forward into more of a right midfield role. And Kyle Walker kind of came out and played right back from the centre half position. He did promise a lot last season, and we I think you had him for a long periods last season, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And he got
Yeah, I
really
did.
unlucky at times with rotation and stuff. I think, especially at the beginning of the season, I don't think that rotation is going to be a problem with Stones, Walker, possibly getting a bit of a rest for the first week. I mean, it's a tough fixture to start resting your first team players in against Spurs, but yeah, if Cancelo can kind of hit the ground running, he got injured just before the Euros, and but he's back and training. So yeah, I'd probably I'm going to back him. Right, midfielders. I think there's only two to choose from. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go first to
Well,
make sure I get my man, and that's Bruno. He was involved in everything last season for Man United. People did say that his form seemed to dip, and yeah, there's a lot of talk still about the amount of points he gets from scoring penalties. I can't see penalties dropping this season. I think that United, with the potential, well, the incoming of Sancho, I think the penalties, if anything, is going to become more for United. Um, Whenever United score, he seems to be involved. When they win, he picks up bonus points as well. I can't see him not um, getting at least somewhere close to what he got last season, considering there was that serious dip in form, sort of from about 3/4 of the way through. So yeah, Bruno is my man. And who's
uh,
your man?
well, I can't choose anyone other than Mohamed Salah, the FPL king. I can't see anyone, beating Bruno or Salah. I think it is literally a coin flip. Although, with again, I mentioned him earlier, Van Dijk coming back, I think it will give a lot more confidence to that Liverpool side. And I think Salah is pivotal for that as well, and scoring those goals. I think with Jota in the side, he's going to be really vital. We saw towards the end of the season, Jota and Firmino kind of switching quite a bit, whereas in previous years it's always been Firmino, Salah, and Mane 90% of the season. Whereas I think this time you'll see Firmino kind of stepping back a bit and Jota playing a bit more. And that will give more creativity in that side, and for Salah to score those points. The other side of looking at it is it could be shared a lot more between Jota and Salah and Mane, because Firmino doesn't really deliver that much from a FPL points point of view, right? So that's the other way of looking at it. With Jota in the side, will it take away points from Salah? Either way, I'm still backing Salah, and I think he will be the top point scorer this year for midfielders.
Yep. I think we're gonna, like I said before, like I think we're going to see a different Liverpool side from what we saw for large parts of last season. I think we're generally going to see a Liverpool side that we saw towards the end of last season. Very strong, attacking a lot. I think they'll use that width more than they did last year. I think Robertson and Trent had to do a lot more defending than they maybe would have liked to because of the weaknesses at the back. I think with Van Dijk back in there, we'll start to see more of that fluidity that I'm saying this as a Man United fan. You did enjoy watching them play at times in over the last 4 years now. So yeah, I wouldn't go against Mohamed Salah being the top FPL scorer for what it would be like the fourth time in 5 seasons or something ridiculous like that. So yeah, you can't go against him. Right, forwards, but I'm gonna take out the cheat code because if he becomes the City player, he will be a cheat code this season and will be.
Antonio's not linked to City.
Well, damn right he ain't linked to City. There's a reason for that. But Harry Kane is linked to City, and I think if he does go, he will be in. Like we're going to see enormous amounts of ownership for him. I think. So let's take Harry Kane out of the question because there's a few interesting names kicking about, especially in that sort of from 6.5 to 8.5 million. There's a large amount of players that you could potentially say any of them could outscore any of the others in that region. Who's your pick?
So I'm going to go again with a left field option, and I'm going to go with Tony of Brentford. And the reason why I'm going to go with him is we saw Leeds last season come into the Premier League for the first time in a long time, and they're very attacking, very free flowing, very pressing, and it was just extremely attacking side. And from what I've heard, and I didn't watch a lot of Brentford's games, but from reading and doing a lot of research and listening to podcasts and videos on them, Brentford play in a very similar way, very attacking with Mbueno and Tony. And I think Tony could be this year's Bamford. So we looked at Bamford. He came in and no one's kind of saw him as a as a Premiership player, played in the Premiership before and hadn't really done well. He was kind of at Middlesbrough. He did crap, but he finished second in point scoring for forwards last year with 195 points. And I think Tony could do something similar. If Brentford play well and play that same attacking football and aren't scared like Leeds weren't, I think Tony could be a real option. And he got 43 goals and assists last year, involved in 51% of all of their goals and assists, and that's mad. So I'm going to go with Tony.
Yeah, I'd agree with Ivan Toney. I think he could potentially be a really good asset this season. Personally, though, I'm looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Everton. The signing of Carlo Ancelotti, signing of Rafa Benitez to replace Carlo Ancelotti, I think is a really good signing for Everton. Ancelotti's left them in a really good place, where over the last couple of seasons, he's kind of got them playing in a slightly different way, producing results at times. I think a lot of last season, the bad results came with injuries in important parts of the team. It'll be interesting to see how Rafa takes them forward. And I think Calvert-Lewin, again, he's another player with a point to prove. Didn't get to play much at the Euros, even with England only taking 2 strikers. He wants to stay in that England squad with the World Cup round the corner. So yeah, it's weird, isn't it? We're already talking about the World Cup round the corner because it
And the
is.
Euros is yeah,
Yeah.
it's mad to think that, isn't it?
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm backing Calvert Lewin for another strong season, maybe a stronger season, because last season he did start well and then dip off around halfway through. After everyone had bought him in, he decided to dip off and troll everyone. But yeah, I'm gonna back him for the full season this year. Yeah, I think Everton they're one of those teams that they could either drop or they could be pushing on and pushing on towards these European places. Because, well, a year ago, well, just under a year ago, we were talking about Everton pushing in for the Champions League places in the top four because they were playing really well and they looked like contenders up there. Would you agree?
Yeah, the only concern with Benitez is, I've spoken to a few Newcastle fans, and they've said that he was quite defensive, and I don't know if that's because that he was at Newcastle and it's a Newcastle thing, or if it's Rafa Benitez. I remember obviously when he was at Liverpool, he was very like a free flowing attacking manager. So I think if he can get them to play attacking free flowing football, then I think Calvert Lewin can do really well. My only concern is it doesn't feel like at the moment there's enough creativity in that Everton midfield. You've got Richarlison and you've got James Rodriguez. It's whether or not James can stay fit. Outside of that, where is that creativity to give Dominic Calvert-Lewin those goals going to come from? Maybe Dean, and we'll talk about him shortly, but I'm not sure where else. That would be my only concern about
I
Calvert-Lewin.
think
But
with
they have 5 or 6 great fixtures to start the season, right?
yeah,
So
we'll learn a
if you're
lot
going to
about
see it, yeah.
we'll learn a lot about them, and it might be worth jumping on Calvert Lewin or Luca Dean early on because yeah, I think they're both potentially going to be up there. And, like, we'll be talking about Luca Dean a bit more very shortly. Right, so we've done the positions, but overall, who's the highest scoring player going to be?
I have to go with Salah for reasons that I've already spoken about earlier.
I'm going to say I'm going to go Bruno, but I think we'll both agree.
It's always a midfielder, right?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's that extra point, isn't it? Well, the extra
Yeah,
point for the clean sheet and the extra point for the goals. Other than that, though, surely we both would. If Kane goes to City, we'd both back Kane. Ooh,
probably.
yeah,
Yeah, probably.
I think
Probably.
Kane with a fully firing Kevin De Bruyne, um, Foden, Sterling all
God,
around
it's
him.
scary. Fucking hell.
Fuck me.
Scary.
It doesn't don't matter if half the defense is injured if you got that up front. They'll just score
Yeah,
6 and let in 5. Um,
exactly.
and then here's one for you, and maybe it's something to come back to after we've done a bit more research. But I've written it down as the Lord Lundstrom of the 2021-22 season. So an OOP differential that will become high owned.
An OOP. Oh, wow. I don't know any OOPs at the moment.
I've I
Um,
I mean, when I wrote this earlier, I spent a long time going through like some heat maps and of stats of like trying to concentrate on Watford, Norwich, and Brentford because that's where like FPL towers they always get a price wrong
wrong.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and there wasn't much. Like at first glance, there's not much you can see, but I did notice something
You're
written
probably going to say what I'm thinking.
written by the Planet FPL Brentford rep, who is FPL Dummy Tom, and he thinks now. So a few weeks ago, he wrote a thread like introducing Brentford into the Premier League for everyone on Twitter. To find him, it's at FPL Dummy Tom. And then he's been thinking that Mbuemo could
It's exactly
potentially
who I was going to
start up
say.
top.
Yeah, it's exactly
And
who I was going to
he's
say.
at 5.5 million.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk about it. Like we'll come to the drafts later, but he's sitting in my draft instead of Tony
Interesting.
because I think 5.5 it's worth a gamble. You can with Brentford as well at the start of the season. They've got Arsenal, who like you don't know what Arsenal you're going to get these days. But by the time the season starts, they could be a lot stronger defensively. With there's lots of talk of Ben White going now. I think from what I'm hearing that is definitely going to happen. But then they've got Palace away. Palace that have lost a large portion of the first team squad who are all out of contract. And then they've got Villa away, trickier. Brighton at home. But it's not like the worst start of fixtures. Where if you're going in with a 5.5 midfielder that could be playing OOP, is that not worth a gamble?
Well, it depends what position they're going to play, what formation. So if they're going 4-3-3, he'll be
Right winger.
on the wing. Yeah,
Yeah.
on the wing. If they're playing 3-5-2, then he did play up front with Tony last year in a 3-5-2, but he also played some games as a right wing back. So that's an OOP the other way. So I think it's a case of let's see what happens in preseason. Let's see what formation they're playing in, which will give us a better idea. And I think it's too early to judge whether or not he'll definitely be as an OOP striker. But either way, as long as he's not playing in that right wing back position, I think is a really good option, even if they are going 4-3-3 and he's up there.
Yeah, it's
A player
one
that I've
definitely
thought
one
of.
to watch.
Yeah, a player that I've thought of, not necessarily an OOP, but a player that I think is one to watch for the season, and it kind of depends on how we play, whether or not we get Lingard, and that's a West Ham player. And I'm going with Ben Rama. He didn't get much of a chance when we signed him last season, and then towards the end of the season, he was playing a few more games. He still hasn't scored for us yet. I'm going to see how he does in pre-season. Obviously, we've got Europa League this season, so it depends whether or not he's going to be playing more in Europa League or in the Premier League. But I think he's one to watch for the season, especially if we don't get Lingard. I think he could be a real star this year. But obviously, he's not out of position, but just one to watch.
Another one actually from United when Rashford's back fit is Greenwood.
Yeah.
Because you'd expect at some point this season that Greenwood will be moving into a number 9 role, because that looks like it is pretty much the plan, and that's why Cavani was kept for an extra year, just to kind of ease Greenwood into that number 9 role with Rashford down the left, Sancho on the right, and Greenwood through the middle. He could be a great option as well. I think he already is a great option from him as a midfielder, but if he goes moves up front, like I could see myself sitting there with one forward and like 2 forwards bench fodder, because I've got Greenwood and Mbuemo for nothing sitting in midfield. He's another one to keep an eye out, especially at the start of the season, whilst Rashford is once we hit the group stages of the Champions League, because Cavani will obviously be rotated then, and whether Greenwood is used more in the league and Cavani's used in Europe, or the other way around. And then there's Martial's back as well, but I'm still umming and ahhing whether he'll actually stay at the club this summer.
Right. Is that section done?
That is all done on our predictions, and we'll visit that back maybe halfway through the season, see how we're getting along. whether we've completely fucked up anywhere.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about our next hot topic. And this is one, again, slightly left field. You might not hear about this much on podcasts. We're going to talk about FPL strategy and specifically the ownership strategy. So we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about our different strategies that we're going to use this season and how they've differed in the past and different types of strategy that you can use. But today we're specifically talking about the ownership strategy. So this is something that I did a couple of years ago when I finished 6,000. And I did a lot of research on this before the season. And what I ended up doing that season was going for players specifically on ownership, picking 7 to 8 players that had the highest ownership in all the players, and then picking 2 to 3 differentials and hoping that I could nail those 2 to 3 differentials. And so what that meant was if I nailed those 2 to 3 differentials there and those higher ownership players played well, it would move me up the ranks. And I was sitting at Christmas time in the top 1,000. And then obviously fell away and ended up finishing 6,000, which is still a good rank. And I went for the top captain every week. So went on had a look at Twitter polls and like scout polls and seeing who had the highest kind of ownership of captains and who was the best captain. And it was a pretty boring game in terms of, you kind of just went with the crowd, but it meant that if you want to get your big ranks, that is I found a really good way to play. The only thing with that is you're probably never going to win, right? Because you're going with the top ownership.
Unless your differentials are fucking
absolutely
crazy.
Smash it.
Yeah.
Unless your differentials smash it, then you're never really gonna win. Now you can still
Does that mean you're going to triple captain ESR at some point this season?
Yeah. You can still do things like upside chasing, similar to like a late riser strategy, where you're bringing in big forwards and then coming off them. So for example, in game week 3, Kane seems to be the best captaincy option, playing Watford at home, whereas United and Liverpool have got tougher fixtures. I think Liverpool have got Chelsea and United have got Wolves. So Bruno and Salah aren't necessarily the best captain. So you can bring out a player and bring in Kane, for example. So you can still do things like that. But it's and to be fair, Kane has high ownership anyway, so it would kind of fall within that model anyway. But doing that means if you start off the season really poorly, your rank isn't going to be that bad because everyone started poorly, or not everyone, but most people have, because obviously the ownership is so high. And you're not going to be in the millions. You'll probably be in the top million, for example. What I found personally in previous years is when I've started off really poorly for the season, I've ended up doing stupid moves to try and chase my rank, and that's made it even worse. Ended up doing worse and worse and worse. I think last year when we started the podcast, I don't know, I can't remember. I think I was 2 million or something like that. And then I had to end up bringing it back down and then ended up finishing in the top 100K, just outside the top 100K. But generally, during that middle part of the season, like the maybe game week 5 to 25, I end up being in the million, and that didn't really work for me because I ended up doing silly moves and it just made it almost worse. Whereas that year that I went really well, I was never really outside the top 20 or 30K. And because I started well, I was within the first 5 game weeks, I was in the top 20K, 30K, I think it was. So that's the kind of, I thought would bring that up, have a bit of an argument about it, see what you think, Rob, because I know you're a slightly different strategy, which we're going to talk about next week, and we'll talk about your strategy next week. But what's your thoughts on that ownership model?
I think it's an interesting idea. I like that how you've acknowledged that it's probably not going to be the most fun way to play the game, but on the other hand, it's always fun to be able to boast and gloat about your rank at the end of the season.
Yeah, well, exactly that.
And well, especially for you, because I spent 6 months earlier this year doing the same thing to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's all the fun that there is, unless you find it fun looking through ownership tables.
Yeah.
I mean, have you found it fun looking at the ownership tables that I've made this
Well,
evening?
the thing is, so the thing is, the players that are generally people want are going to be the highest ownership anyway. Okay, so if we look at strikers, for example, from what I understand, I think you've got it on here anyway. Tony, Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, Kane, they're the top highest owners, right? I would probably be taking 3 of them anyway. Like, forget about ownership. I would be looking at 3 of them anyway, or I'd be looking at 2 and then a fodder one, right? So, and then you
Finished
look at
Mbappe.
midfield. Yeah, the finish Mbappe.
Had to fit it in
um,
there somewhere.
yeah, you had to. Yeah. Um, that's for people that listen to our Euro podcast. The Finland one will know about the finish Mbappe. And then if you look at midfielders, you know, you've got Salah, Fernandez, Grealish, Rafinha. Those are the top midfielders. Rafinha is just a bloody bargain, and I think he's going to be in most people's side anyway. You forget about ownership. Bruno and Salah we spoke about. So the difference for me, I would say, is last year I'd probably get one of Bruno or Salah, whereas this year I'm definitely getting both. And I'm even trying to find a way to try and fit in Kane if I can. I found a way to fit in Kane. It's not in my current draft, but I found a way to fit him in if I do want him. So I think it's the popular players anyway that we expect to score well and we expect to do well throughout the season. And then it's those 2 to 3 other players that you can have fun with. So for me, as we'll come to our drafts later, you'll see I like Buendia. I think he's a good one. Potentially Sarr is an option. So it's these other players that you can kind of gamble on. And I think that's playing it safer. Obviously, it could go tits up, and the owner, you know, it could be all the differentials that end up starting really well. Then the other thing that we spoke about before we went on air, we spoke about this yesterday, Rob, was doing my strategy that I'm thinking about doing. You have to kind of go with the crowd. So if
I mean,
people are wildcarding early,
I was gonna
you have
say,
to do
like,
that.
I'll play a bit of devil's advocate, and when people use chips, you've got to use them as well.
Yeah,
And in weeks where there's free hits, you're probably going to have to be doing a lot of looking at what people around Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, what people are doing with their free hits to try and judge it, because you won't get sort of an accurate ownership figure, will you, from that? Um, so you're going to have to do
yeah.
a lot of work around your chips. You're going to be forced to wildcard the same time everyone else is going to wildcard. You're going to be forced to take your triple captain and put it on the highest EO
Yep.
in the week in a double that's the best to triple captain someone. Um,
Which is not like me and my game. You know,
no,
you know how I've been playing last year, and you know that I'm pretty maverick. So to
yeah,
do something like this
triple
is,
captained Suchek, wasn't it, last year?
yeah.
um,
So to do something like this is very different. But I'm gonna try and recreate some of that form that I created that year when I finished 6,000, and that was a good model. And then I don't know why I changed it, but that was something that really worked that year.
I think on the other hand, like mentioning about like with chips and stuff, um, potentially going into your second wild card, you're going to have more money potentially, because you're going to be having higher owned players who are going to be increasing in value. Um, I mean, you're also going to have to pick the right high owned players. I mean, Ivan Toney, for example, at his ownership, how it is now, he will be 6.6 like the night after game week 1. Like, he will
Yeah,
go up,
yeah.
and he may even go up again before game week 2. So then
If he
you've gained,
scores as well.
so then you've gained 0.2 in the first week. Um, So yeah, and you're going to get a lot of that over the course of the season because you're going to be having all of these players that are returning along with being sort of over. I mean, generally thinking it's all going to be sort of, what's your cap for high ownership? 20% or 25%? You're going to try and look for,
I would.
or as
It's
high
going to
as
be different.
possible.
Yeah, so I'll definitely have. I would say the top two in each position ownership wise, right? So definitely the top two, like top two defenders, top two midfielders and attackers, and then it might be like the fourth. So for example, Fofana I think is third for defenders at the moment. I might not have Fofana. I might have Lamptey instead, for example. Diaz is fourth. I might not have Diaz. I'll have Dean instead. So I think if I've got at least the top three, like three out of the top five in each position, or 2 to 3, like so 3 out of the top five for defenders, 3 out of the top five for midfielders, and 2 out of the top three for forwards, and then 1 out of the top three for goalkeepers. That's the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking at doing. But obviously, as the weeks go on, it changes, right? So I'll have to look at my transfers will have to be around which players' ownerships are going up rather than who I think is going to score the most points that week. And that's where the gamble bit comes in. Is okay, so I don't know, Kane's ownership is going through the roof. Do I bring in Kane or do I get Antonio because he's got a really good fixture and I think he's going to do well? Do you see that? That's where the FPL mind then comes in, going right. What bit do you go for? And so that it's not just boring just going for ownerships. There is a bit of like my own wisdom and my own kind of intuition and stats, eye test, all of that
I'll
stuff.
stick to the numbers, mate, rather than your own wisdom and intuition.
But yeah, I just thought it'd be a good topic to talk about because strategy is something that people always like to understand and kind of work out what strategy do people go for, and do you just pick random players, etc. And next week we'll talk about your strategy. I don't know if you want to quickly tell people what your strategy is and what they got to look forward to next week.
Well, is it something to look forward to? So I'm going to be. I think I'm going to be looking at sort of using the stats and the numbers a lot more, and we'll just have a little bit of a discussion maybe on the eye test versus stats debate that we seem to get this debate throughout summers, through international breaks, etc. So yeah, I think we'll have that a little bit of a debate on that next week, and a discussion, because I'm thinking of I think where last season we were able to watch a lot of football. Where I was able to watch, like, there were some weeks I'd watch all 10 games all the way through. But next season, you're not going to get that. You're not going to be able to watch every game all the way through. In a lot of cases, it will be sticking on match of the day on a Saturday night, or probably more likely on a Monday lunchtime. Stick match of the day on, and that's how I'll be watching a large portion of the game. So I'm going to have some more info to back up what I've seen in highlights, because that's what they are. They're highlights. I'm not seeing other parts of the game. I mean, match of the day is a lot better than it was 20 years ago. It shows a lot, like, a more balanced view of every single game, whereas before it'd be like the first half
The
an hour.
goals.
It'd be first half an hour on one game, and then it'd be the goals for the rest of the
Yeah,
games. But
yeah,
now it's
that's
like
right.
10 minutes for every game, isn't it?
Yeah,
So yeah, just have a little discussion on that, because yeah, I think a lot of people out there, like, there'll be a lot of people that are in my position that did watch a lot of the football last year, and are thinking, now how can I still get that same picture but not actually have the picture, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
So yeah, we'll have a little discussion on that next week, after I've just done a bit more reading and looking at the numbers, because that's what it is all about, looking at the numbers. So yeah, we'll look into
Perfect.
that.
Right, so let's go on to our ones to watch section. And in this one, we're going to be covering a couple of players we both like for the first 6 game weeks of the season. So I've picked 2, Rob's picked 2. We're just going to talk about why we like these players and some stats as well that you'll see on your screens now about last season and how they performed. So, Rob, why don't you go first? Because I'm always talking, as you say.
Well, my 2 players are Bruno Fernandes. I don't think we need to talk about why I've picked him as a one to watch. I think he's potentially going. I think in the way that United look like they're strengthening, I think he's going to be an even better asset next year, with a lot more movement around him. So yeah, I'm going to back him to outscore his total last year. That's how confident I am with him. This could go horribly wrong come May. I could be very disappointed when we finish 5th. So yeah, I'm going with Bruno. At the end of the day, 18 goals, 12 assists. Yeah, 9 of them were penalties, but it's still 9 goals, 12 assists.
Fernandes, yeah. Bruno Fernandes.
Hernandez, yeah. 9 of them were penalties, but like we said earlier, the signing of Sancho is going to mean possibly more penalties rather than less. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes. Now, and obviously the fixture run. Now, speaking of OOPs that we did earlier, it came to my attention. So we've got at City, if they don't have, if they haven't signed Harry Kane, they'll have Gabriel Jesus as their only recognised number 9, and in large periods of last season, Pep didn't like to play Gabriel Jesus as his recognised number 9, and preferred other players to fill that spot. And one of those players was Ferran Torres. So OOP, 7 million midfielder.
Very cheap.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You sent me an emoji, like a very shocked emoji at 7 million. Like his numbers weren't amazing for last season, but it may be due to the lack of minutes. There was only 14 and a half games that he played in total, 14.5 90 minute worth of 90 minutes over the course of the season. So his figures don't scream at you, but with a lack of striker there, and even if they do sign a striker, De Bruyne could be. I'm not sure what the update is with Kevin De Bruyne, but he could be out for a couple, at least the start of the season. So yeah, I think it's just worth so much value in it, 7 million. And I think, well, the week before they play in the Community Shield, and we might get a clue as to what Pep's thinking up front. I can't see Sterling starting the season. I think his exploits in the summer have probably earned him that extra week off, which he'll probably get to get back into training, etc. So yeah, I'm really backing Ferran Torres. I think it's too hard to ignore at 7 million, especially when you've got other players around that price point that might not even play. So yeah, I've gone with those 2, and your 2 are.
I've gone with Buendia at Villa for my first one. So a couple of reasons. First reason is when I was looking at players to choose based on the first few game weeks, I'm mainly a fixtures guy. So I looked at who do I think have got really good fixtures, and Villa's first 3 fixtures are really good, and it follows by a couple of tough ones. But I'm backing Buendia because of his form last year in the Championship. Now, yes, it was in the Championship, but he got 15 goals and 15 assists last year. And if you work out what that would have been in FPL points,
one of them was a penalty though. So should we be calling him Pendia? He, hey,
Okay, 1 penalty compared to Bruno's 9. All right.
this is it's something that I have heard somewhere else. Like at Villa, El Ghazi takes the penalties. Now,
And he probably won't be playing as much.
yeah, will Buendia end up taking the penalties at Villa?
That's
That's an
interesting.
interesting one, and he could be Pendia
Could be. He could
by
be.
Christmas time with Jack. If Jack Grealish is there winning penalties every game, then yeah, definitely.
So in FPL points, he would have got 199 FPL points, and that's without any bonus points. So when you add in bonus points to that, that could be 240, 250. So obviously I know that it's championship and obviously it's an extra 4 games, but still that 15 goals, 15 assists is a great return coming into a Villa side where you've got Ollie Watkins, who I believe is a natural born scorer. Like if you give him the ball and you feed it to him, he will score. So it's not like he's going to, I don't know, a Palace or a Newcastle or a side that, well, not Newcastle actually because they've got Wilson, but a side that don't have a great striker. They're going to, he's playing in the side that has a great striker in Watkins to finish them off. And obviously he scored 15 goals as well. So he can score them. So yeah, that's my pick, my first pick. Obviously you've got a range of other stats on the screen, but I'm not going to go through all of them. But the only one thing to be concerned with him is he got 8 yellow cards and 2 red cards last year. So he's a bit of a dirty boy, shall we say.
I mean,
So one thing to be wary of.
His non-penalty XG plus XA was 17.2, which that's pretty good considering that, like, if you think that Bruno is 18.8. So there's the comparison. Then that's 0.47 per 90, whilst Bruno's 0.55. So it's you're just looking just underneath that sort of elite level in from the championship. It's like you said though, it's whether he can convert that into the Premier League. But I think he's good enough to.
And my second player is Luca Dean. So I think this really relies on what how Rafa is going to play. I said that I spoke earlier about Rafa Benitez, and I think he'll pick up a lot of clean sheets with his defensive style play. So Luca Dean could do really well from a defensive point of view, but we also know he's really attacking. Last year he picked up 7 assists, and we know that he could have got a lot more. I talked earlier about how I was concerned about Everton being able to have that attacking threat and where that attacking threat is going to come from a creativity point of view. And I think Luca Dean is really important to that with his free kicks and corners. And obviously they start off the season with 6 really great fixtures. So I'm backing Luca Dean as my other one to watch for the first few game weeks. And as you'll see when we show our drafts shortly, they are both in my side at the moment. So yeah, those are the 2 that I'm going for.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to look back after the first few game weeks of the season to see how these picks have got on.
Yeah.
As well,
we'll probably have a few more ones to watch as we get close to the season, and we've seen like teams have started playing friendlies now. So we're gonna obviously you don't look at like who's scoring or what. You want to look at where players are playing. It's the sort of thing where heat maps are really good for like don't watch a friendly, but like just look at the heat maps, and I think you'll learn more about how a player's playing and their positioning from that than you would necessarily from sitting and watching the 90 minutes of football that you might not necessarily be interested in.
And every week before obviously the season starts, we'll continue this ones to watch, and we'll kind of either add to it or change it, or we'll talk about a couple of players that we like. Next week it might be, I don't know, budget midfielders or budget defenders or whatever, but we'll always be comparing.
Next week City have signed Kane, and I just go, I don't want Ferran Torres anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so let's move on to our penultimate section, and that is our drafts before we answer some of your Twitter questions. So let's just look at our drafts quickly, where they're at so far, and see what changes. What it's looking like briefly, and any thoughts on it. So is this your one?
Yeah. So at the moment, I've gone with Sancho and Sancho. Yeah, I've got Sancho in goal. So I've got Sanchez and Gaeta, which is, I think that's fairly template at the moment. I want to try and escape from it, but I'm just got to work out how and where I'm going to. So I've got those two. My defenders, TAA, Digne, and Sufal. And then I've got Lorente and I can't say his name. He plays for Watford, but he starts at centre half, or at least he started the last 8 games of the season at centre half, and he was 4 million, so he's just bench fodder. Then midfielders, I've got Bruno, Salah, the Croydon, De Bruyne, Smith Rowe, and Torres. And then I've got Mbuemo currently as well. And then my forwards, I've got Watkins, Welbeck, and Calvert Lewin. So I've gone pretty cheap up front. I'm not sure, and someone has asked about this in the questions, whether I've maybe spent a bit too much at the back. Could I shave 0.5 somewhere? But I think if I'm shaving 0.5, I'm probably having to shave it off Digne than Sufal. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I'm still weighing up a lot. I mean, this is just an initial draft that I've probably spent like an hour or two, sort of playing around and building it. Because neither of us really looked at the game till sort of Monday, really. Or tried to look at it on Monday. I was really hungover. So yeah, this is how I'm looking at the moment. Yeah, I think it's just a case of just tweaking bits here and there. I'd really want to maybe take a gamble on Henderson as United's number 1, but I think that's something that we do have to kind of watch the friendlies for to see if he starts more than De Gea does. But I think that De Gea might be gone by the time the season starts anyway, which would remove the question. And if that's the case, then I'll just go Henderson, and I think Heaton's at 4 million, which I think Henderson and Heaton as a two, but then that limits you on United assets moving forward. So it's not the best double up to go with.
I think as the preseason goes on and we start doing more research, because bear in mind that we've been focused on Euro fantasy for the last kind of 6 weeks. This will change. Preseason friendlies, injuries,
Massively, yeah.
transfers. It will change. The template will change. The ownership stuff will change. So I think it will change for both of us. So I think it's a good basis to start with. But what you're seeing now, almost definitely won't be what you'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
before game week 1. But it's good to kind of reflect and have a look at it, and gives you an idea of where to tweak and where to change.
Yeah, I mean, I think if say Varane ends up at United, I'll probably be looking at double United defence, because there's entry points there that like decent value. You can get Shaw and Henderson as a double United defence.
Or if Kane goes to City, you'll have to take
out
Torres. Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? So you probably won't want Ferran Torres anymore,
and I want Harry Kane,
and you want Kane. So then you'll have to move people around. So
then I think then you'd be looking at. I'd probably. I mean, one player
a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2.
One player I was really hoping that we'd get the price before we recorded, but it hasn't been officially announced. Well, it might have been whilst we've been recording, and that's Jaden Sancho. Because if he's around the 9 million mark, I think I would leave Bruno out and go with Jaden Sancho instead, and then that frees up 3 million to be able to spend elsewhere. But yeah, I want him at that, not anywhere under 9.5. Anything more than that, I'll be going Bruno. But Yeah, I think that 9.5, I'll be yeah, I think he's straight into my team because I don't think he'll have a break. I think it'll be a case of um, yeah, if he feels he's ready, and at United he will be ready, like mentally and everything. Then yeah, I think he could come in and just blow teams away in the first few game weeks. Let's have a look at your team then. How are we looking? Oh, look, it's not quite the same as mine.
So mine is very, as we discussed earlier, ownership based. I've got Sanchez, Dean, Shaw, TA at the back, and the thing is with this, right? So obviously Shaw is high up on the ownership at the moment, but we don't know whether or not he's going to start the season. The other thing that I've got is obviously TAA is there, but I could potentially lose TAA to bring in Kane if I wanted to, because that will save 3 million and then shave off a bit of the midfield. So I'm giving myself options there if I did want to do that. In defense, I've got Fofana and is it Fofana and Williams there?
Yeah.
Fofana and Williams. I haven't done enough research in the 4 million defenders, so I didn't know about that Watford defender. But Williams, I believe, should be on his way to Southampton. If not, I don't know if that's definitely confirmed. But he's a good shout as a 4 million defender if he does go to Southampton. Fofana could become Lamptey. I really like Brighton, as I said at the beginning of the pod. So, you know, Lamptey could swap in for Fofana. And then in midfield, I've got Bruno, Salah, with my differential being Buendia, Rafinha, and I've just got Basuma in there as a 4.5 fodder. Again, all based on ownership. Salah, Rafinha, and Bruno are all kind of the highest. And then the top three ownership, highest ownership forwards, and that's Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, and Tony. So I might have a couple of differentials in there with Buendia and Lamptey, but other than that, it's pretty template and boring, to be honest.
So that's that
then. I do think there's value in it and doing it that way, and I'm going to try the season and see how it starts off. It might be that I get to game week 15 and either I'm extremely bored or it's going really bad, and I might change it up.
You'll just give it up.
Not give up, but do my wild card and just change it up. Right, let's get to some Twitter questions. Rob, what are the Twitter questions saying?
Right, so first up, we've got a question from @JHulkJohn or Johnstein. Is big at the back ever worth it? Trent and Robbo double up sounds tempting. Dean with the fixtures is a lock for me. Shaw is a popular pick. And then put in a City or Chelsea defender, Soufal or Brighton defender, and you've suddenly got a strong back five. Is it worth it?
Yes, potentially. I think it would be very difficult to do it if you want Kane in your side. So if Kane does go to City, it's going to be hard to do that and have Bruno and Salah. You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to have TA, that's for sure. I don't know if it's worth it starting off with the season, but as we know, as the season goes on, we might see templates forming. I think the problem with starting off the season having big at the back means that you've got very little flexibility up top and in midfield. So if templates stop forming and players start performing and new players that we hadn't have thought about, it's going to be difficult to change. So I like to have different price points. So I've got obviously TAA, Dean at 5.5, Shaw at 5.5, and then I've got a 4.5 and a 4, right? One of those 5.5 could become a 5. So I've got different price points, and I think that's a good way to start the season. I personally wouldn't start 5 big at the back.
Yeah, I'm agreed with that. I think it means that you tend to be, things are very rigid, and it will take you a couple of weeks to get out of that or a points hit, or even worse, you might end up having to use your wild card at a time when you maybe wouldn't want to. So yeah, I think it's a case of have a look at the fixture runs. Who's got the best fixture runs from point A to point B? Right, that's your premium or two premiums at the back, but I wouldn't be going any more than two. Like, I think two is at a push, and I think this is why I'm not liking having Trent and Robbo, because
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of money tied up when there's other defenders around. People like Luke Shaw, Vladimir Sufal, Ricardo Pereira you'd throw in there as well, and um, we could produce a list, Luca Dean, a list of players like from every team in the Premier at some point now have a good fixture run, and they're at 5.5, and you can just target the fixture runs with those 5.5 players. Keep your TAA or your Robbo if you want to drop it down one locked in, and then don't touch your 4.5s or your fours. It's those middle ones that you really want to be moving around if you're having to. So yeah, just to prevent you from having to do that. Right, on to at FPL Pep Talk. With Kane probably knackered after the Euro, I think he was knackered before the Euros, and trying to negotiate a transfer away from Spurs, Vardy getting on a bit and conceding central striker status to Nacho, and Aubameyang coming off the back of a frankly awful season, are we going to see the death of the premium striker in FPL? Well,
Yes. If Kane doesn't go to City, yes.
oh yeah,
I can see us having Kane, both of us, either of us having Kane at some
some
point
point,
during the
yeah.
season, even if he stays at Spurs, right?
Well, at some
But
point, yeah, at some point they're going to be playing, and no offence, but they're going to be playing a Norwich, a Watford at
yeah,
home,
yeah,
and he would have scored a brace the week before, and you'll be captaining him, and he'll get an assist. But
yeah. So I don't think we're going to go through the season without having Kane in our side, but having more than one at the same time, i.e., having Kane and Vardy in at the same time, I don't think could happen or will happen because there's enough. Not budget strikers. I wouldn't call them budget. I would say medium priced, i.e., your Watkins and your DCLs, because they're not premium, but they're not budget either. I think it will be one premium at most plus two budget. Sorry, one mid and one budget, or two mid. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't think.
I don't think it'll. I mean, and on the other hand, if Kane does go to City, that he's in everyone's team, like we said earlier, he's in everyone's team the moment that happens, and he stays there for as long as his ankles can hold out, basically.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but yeah, Vardy, I'm not looking at. Aubameyang is one that interests me. Um, I think it depends what Arsenal we see. Um, I think it's the sort of fixture. Didn't they? Who did they have game week one last year? Did they have Palace,
Fulham,
Fulham at home,
Fulham,
or Fulham
hmm
away? And he
Fulham,
was,
and they Fulham away,
and he
I
got an
believe, and they won
assist,
3-1.
and he got an
Yeah, yeah,
assist.
yeah.
But everyone was on him. I mean, he was a midfielder as well, which helped. But I think there'll be a time this season when people will go on to him because he'll go on a little run. I think injuries cost him a bit last year, so he's someone that I'm not going to dismiss before the season's even started. Although, have you seen his haircut?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, it's horrendous. Just search Aubameyang hair on
I think,
Google.
Rob, do we need to bring back Panda's picks for our weekly feature?
Yeah. Um, we we'd scare off half the viewers with this picture of Aubameyang. So yeah, I wouldn't be like dismissing him straight away because if he bangs in a hat trick against Brentford and maybe picks up another goal against either Chelsea or City, I'll probably have him in my team by the time we get to the Norwich game, wouldn't you? You'd probably back him
Mm.
then. Yeah, not going to dismiss him yet, despite how bad Arsenal may or may not look. Right, this one from Stian, FPL Binger Stian. How will you lads handle premiums this season? Do we even need them? And at first glance, where are the hidden gems in the promoted teams? Well, we've spoken a bit about, I think generally how we're going to handle the premiums, like looking at Salah, Bruno as like both of us are pretty confident that they're going to be in our teams for most of the season. If you follow your ownership model, you're going to have them for the whole season unless they get injured, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've spoken a bit about forwards, like generally only have one at most, but there'll be times when we don't have any premiums up front, and at the back, no more than one, maybe two. So I think we've covered that. And I mean, other than the ones we've already mentioned, is there any other hidden gems that you've come across in the promoted teams?
Saar.
Yeah, Ismail
Saar
Assar.
is one to look at. I don't know what type of role Gilmore is going to play in that Norwich side, but he could be one to look at 4.5. Is he more of a defensive midfielder or kind of attacking midfielder? I don't really know
I
much
think
about
he's
Billy
more of
Gilmore.
an 8. From what I
Okay.
saw in that game, England v Scotland, he was like an 8, like very box
So
to box.
Norwich have some terrible fixtures to start, so I think it's a good time to watch and see what kind of position he plays in. But he could be a good
Well,
option at 4.5.
I think he'll
To
be
be honest,
playing
I
very
might even start him.
defensively in especially
Yeah,
in the first
I think.
three.
I mean, I've got Basuma there at the moment, but I might start Gilmore. I might have Gilmore instead, just as a 4.5, just as a if he does play really well in those first few fixtures, I've got him in my side. I think he might be a better option than Basuma. But yeah, and Bueno, Sarr, obviously Tony. I think those are the ones that I know of. But as we do more research in the pods, I'm sure we'll be able to talk about them
Yeah,
more. I think probably one episode we might do as one hot topics. We might just look at promoted players from promoted sides. I think we did have that as one of the options for the poll
yeah,
actually, which didn't win.
yeah.
But
I
we'll
mean,
probably do that
yeah, we'll
again.
stick that up again as an option. And I mean, one thing I have found when I have had a look at some of the promoted side, they're signing players. Like there's a couple of them that have signed 2 or 3 players already, and so they again something to keep an eye on through the friendlies, like which players are playing, and yeah, keep an eye out on correspondent week,
Yep.
Planet FPL, because they'll be the correspondents will be watching all of these friendlies for the promoted sides. That's where we can really learn a bit more about them. So, like even I think Watford signed a couple of players in January and kind of just gradually bedded them in towards the end of last season. I think it was Watford. So yeah, and I'd want to know whether those players are looking at actually coming in. Yeah, they're 3 very interesting sides. I think 2 of them maybe are slightly more stronger and will be more equipped to deal with the Premier League than one of them is. I'm not going to say which because otherwise someone will laugh at me for getting it wrong. So yeah, we'll we'll definitely be visiting the promoted side, having an in-depth look at some point. Because if you guys don't vote it, then we'll just do it on our selection one
Yeah.
week. So yeah, we'll definitely be covering it before the start of the season. Right. From Steve Bird, is ESR essential?
I'll let
Um,
you answer that one, mate.
he if we see a good Arsenal at 5.5, I was expecting him to come in at 6. To be fair, so
I don't know about essential. The reason why that question was asked, for
episode 1,
viewers and listeners, viewers and listeners that haven't seen us from the very beginning, episode 1, our first ever episode, Rob decided to say that Emil Smith Rowe was essential, and I laughed in his face. And ever since then, all our listeners that heard that have been taking the piss and basically
yeah.
said, "Is ESR essential?" So that's why that
I
question
was
is
a few
coming.
beers deep, but then he did score that weekend as well. I
He
seem
did.
to
He
remember he
did.
scored the winner against Newcastle in the cup in extra time.
Indeed, he did.
So there you go. Right, and finally from FPL Glasto, evening Paul. This is not any fantasy football related at all, because he said he'd ask a Champman question, but it's not fair to put you through it again because you don't play the game. So he's just asked, "What's your favourite dessert?" Steve did reply saying it was tiramisu, but not at the moment. What is your favourite dessert?
I'm banoffee pie. I love banoffee pie, mate.
Well, I'd have a bit of a banoffee pie, to be fair.
Yeah,
Oh, there's so many desserts. I just like ice cream. I
ice
love
cream's
ice
good.
cream. That's probably my worst habit, is sitting there with like Ben and Jerry's or something like that, and
I've done that so many
I'll just sit
times.
there and demolish it, and like sit there and watch a film, and I'll just sit there and watch it, and the missus will be like, "I can I have a bit," and it's like, "Oh, there's a little bit here." Um, yeah, so I think, yeah, Ben, we'll say, yeah, ice cream. Won't say a specific brand, unless they want to pay us for advertising. Anyway, thanks for everyone for their questions. Some bits to finish us off. We've got our mini league. We'll be posting out more details for it as we get closer to the season. There is a code kicking about somewhere on our timeline, but we'll stick it in our description on Twitter, so you can enter into that. And what are the prizes this year for the mini league? First place, we're gonna. What did we say we'd get them?
Some sort of I don't know, cash prize or something. I don't know. I don't think we
Oh
decided.
no, what we'll get is we'll get you a shirt of your choice.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So yeah, there's and we'll get it printed with our names on the back. And our faces on each sleeve. Uh,
No, we won't. No, we won't. Don't worry. Don't worry.
so
No one will enter the league.
that's the prize, and we may even do a cup competition for all the mini league entrants as well, which we may have another prize for. We'll close the entries to the mini league sort of 6 or 7 game weeks in, so we don't get someone that's ranked number 5 in the world just enter into the mini league 100 points of everyone else. So there's that. For those that might be interested, I run a mini league with there is an entry requirement, which part of it goes to a local sports club that I'm on the committee for, who are constantly trying to fundraise for their growth, and with they've taken on youth teams and everything this season. So yeah, if you'd like more details on that, just drop me a DM on Twitter, or whack it in the comments on YouTube, and yeah, I can get in contact with you. But yeah, last year we had about just under 180 players. There's 4 free cup competitions. There's a main league. We do a golden boot. We do a golden glove. So lots of other side competitions as well. It makes it quite fun. And we've even got someone to write the weekly updates for me this year, to bring a nice entertaining spin on how the standings are every week. So yeah, get involved. The more the merrier. It just means that the prizes are better
And
come
they
the
get
end of the
sent a
season.
sheet as well, don't they?
Yeah. So then within that, included in your entrance requirement, you get obviously your entry. There's a charity donation, and you also have the option for a planner. So those of you that don't know, I do a transfer planner that yeah, covers everything, projections and everything. It's all auto updated through Google Sheets. Um, so yeah, you get all of that included as well, which some people said that's worth the entry requirement alone. And like the leagues and everything, it's just a bonus. And some people say it's the other way around. But yeah, and it's like a lot of the graphics you see here are stuff that's taken, extracted from that, and just made to look like it should be for our pod. So yeah, that's it. That's everything.
That's everything. our first pod of the season sorted.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Any feedback is really important to us. You can find us on Twitter at FPL_Happy Hour. As I said earlier, also on a number of podcasts and our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share, and all your retweets are really appreciated. We'll be doing another episode next week. So to all the new listeners, listen out for that and watch out for that. Catch you then. Have a great game week. Oh,
Cheers,
no,
guys.
not game week. Sorry, you'll have to edit that. Have a great week because the game week hasn't started.
Cheers, guys.